to John.
Glory be to thee, O Lord.
A certain man, Lazarus, was ill. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This was the Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wrapped his feet with her hair. Her brother, Lazarus, was ill. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, saying, Lord, the one whom you love is ill. When he heard this, Jesus said, this illness isn't fatal. It's for the glory of God, so that God's Son can be glorified through it. Jesus loved Martha, her sister, and Lazarus. When he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed where he was. After 2 days, he said to his disciples, let's return to Judea again. The disciples replied, Rabbi, the Jewish opposition wants to stone you, but you want to go back? Jesus answered, aren't there 12 hours in a day? Whoever walks in the day doesn't stumble because they can see the light of the world. But whoever walks in the night does stumble because the light isn't in them. He continued, our friend Lazarus is sleeping, but I am going in order to wake him up. The disciples said, Lord, if he's sleeping, he will get well. They thought Jesus meant that Lazarus was in a deep sleep, but Jesus had spoken about Lazarus' death. Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. For your sakes, I am glad I wasn't there, so that you can believe. Now let's go to him. Then Thomas, the one called Didymus, said to the other disciples, let's go too, so that we may die with Jesus. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was a little less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. Many Jews had come to comfort Martha and Mary after their brother's death. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, while Mary remained in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. Martha replied, I know that he will rise in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live, even though they die. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She replied, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, God's Son, the one who is coming into the world. After she said this, she went and spoke privately to her sister Mary. The teacher is here, and he's calling for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to Jesus. He hadn't entered the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were comforting Mary in the house saw her get up quickly and leave, they followed her. They assumed that she was going to mourn at the tomb. When Mary arrived where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. When Jesus saw her crying, and the Jews who had come with her crying also, he was deeply disturbed and troubled. He asked, where have you laid him? They replied, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. The Jews said, see how much he loved him? But some of them said, he healed the eyes of the blind man. Couldn't he have helped Lazarus? Couldn't he have kept him from dying? Jesus was deeply disturbed again. And then he came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone covered the entrance. Jesus said, remove the stone. Mary, the sister of the dead man, said, Lord, the smell will be awful. He's been dead for 4 days. Jesus replied, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see God's glory? So they removed the stone. Jesus looked up and said, Father, thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me. I say this for the benefit of the crowd standing here, so that they will believe that you sent me. Having said this, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! The dead man came out, his feet bound and his hands tied and his face covered with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, untie him and let him go. Therefore, many of the Jews who came with Mary and saw what Jesus did believed in him. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to thee, O Christ.
May God's word be spoken and God's word be heard. Amen.
Our story for today is an old favorite, The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Carr. In the light of the moon, a little egg lay on the leaf. One Sunday morning, the warm sun came up, and pop, out of the egg came a teeny tiny, very hungry caterpillar. He started to look for some food. On Monday, he ate through one apple, but he was still hungry. On Tuesday, he ate through 2 pears, but he was still hungry. On Wednesday, he ate through 3 plums, but he was still hungry. On Thursday, he ate through 4 strawberries, but he was still hungry. On Friday, he ate through 5 oranges, but he was still hungry. On Saturday, he ate through 1 piece of chocolate cake, 1 ice cream cone, 1 pickle, 1 slice of Swiss cheese, 1 slice of salami, 1 lollipop, 1 piece of cherry pie, 1 sausage, 1 cupcake, and 1 slice of watermelon. That night he had a stomach ache. The next day was Sunday again. The caterpillar ate through 1 nice green leaf, and after that he felt much better. Now he wasn't hungry anymore, and he wasn't a little caterpillar anymore. He was a big, fat caterpillar. He built a small house called a cocoon around himself. He stayed inside for more than 2 weeks. Then he nibbled a hole in the cocoon, pushed his way out, and he was a beautiful butterfly.
Well, here we come to the end of our Lenten series on being called to the cross, the second theme in Matthew's Gospel, that we are called to the cross. So let's review and see where this Lenten journey has led us. Okay? First, we were called to the cross, meaning to die to our own personal ambitions and thoughts of who we think we're supposed to be. We heard the story of 3 trees. And we heard the gospel of Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, where even if Jesus had given into those ideas, those 3 temptations, for altruistic reasons, to help the world, it would not have been what God wanted. So we're called to die to our own ambitions, our own thoughts of who we should be, and allow God to make of us what God would make of us. Second, we're called to a baptismal life of being born again, meaning a cycle of dying and rising to life over and over, an attitude of life, a way of living where we are always dying to the old and being reborn to the new. Spiritual thirst, dying to the idea of hunger that doesn't satisfy, and being thirsty for the living spiritual waters that Jesus brings. And realizing that sin does not have any hold over us, but being dead to sin. That Christ paid the price for sin on the cross, and we are now free to be beloved children of God. And now on this final Sunday before Palm Sunday, we are called to the cross and we are shown death. We are shown how to die. The story of the hungry caterpillar and the story of Lazarus both teach us 4 lessons about dying. And the first lesson is that we have to die, that death is necessary. It can't be avoided. It is interesting that this little tiny caterpillar emerges and is hungry. And what does he go looking for? Food, and he finds an apple. Now that sounds very healthy. Fruit. Good idea. So he eats one. But it doesn't satisfy. And so he goes on to eat 2 pears. And then 3 of the next fruit, and 4 of the next fruit, and 5 of the next fruit, until by Saturday he is binging on junk food. Cupcakes and cheese and salami and pie. And at the end of that day, when he tries to eat 1 slice of watermelon, when he tries to eat the fruit again, he has a stomachache. Because that's not what satisfies his hunger. That's not what he needs. And so it is not by coincidence that it is Sunday again, and he eats 1 green leaf. He eats what he was intended to eat all along, and he feels much better. That is like our Lenten fast, giving up all that stuff that fills us but doesn't satisfy, so we can't even eat the good stuff we started with, but fasting and having 1 small leaf so that we can get our bearings. But the damage has been done. The caterpillar has to die. He's no longer what he started out to be, and he must be changed. And so he goes into his cocoon. The caterpillar has to die. Now it's also interesting that in the story of Lazarus, Jesus was warned Lazarus was sick. Jesus had healed many. Lazarus was one of his best friends. Every time he went to Jerusalem, he would stay in Bethany with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They were apparently very wealthy, had a big house, lots of provisions, and Jesus would stay there whenever he was nearby. So he hears that Lazarus is sick. In fact, the message is the one you love is sick. And Jesus doesn't go. And both of the sisters afterwards say, Jesus, if you had been here, he wouldn't have had to die. But what does Jesus say to his disciples? He has to die. Lazarus has to die. So the first message, the first lesson that we are given today is that death must take place. Things in our lives must die. We must die. Things must come to an end. It is necessary for God's glory. For God's glory. The second lesson we see is that we have to grieve that loss. We can't say, oh, well, that's the way of the world. Things die, things come, things go. Say, Sarah, Sarah. No. In the King James Version, the shortest verse in the whole Bible is in this passage. Jesus wept. 2 words. Jesus wept. He cried. He cried. Lazarus was dead, and he was moved with compassion and he cried. We too have to grieve. It's painful to lose things. That's reality. It is necessary, yes. Things must die. Things must go. The past must go away and the future has to come. But that doesn't mean we ignore that. It doesn't mean we don't feel the pain. The second lesson of the gospel today is that we must allow ourselves to weep. We must take the time to grieve what has been lost, even though it is necessary. The third lesson is that we have to rest. After loss, after death, there must come a time of rest. The caterpillar went into his cocoon for over 2 weeks. Lazarus was in the tomb for 4 days. We tend to rush past that. Let's get to the good part. Let's get to the butterfly. Let's get to the resurrection. Let's get to Easter.
change does not happen without rest. Lazarus was not in that tomb rotting. Remember, Mary said, you might not want to take that stone away. He's been dead 4 days. I love the King James Version. He stinketh. Sounds very poetic. But a dead body is not nice. But Jesus says, no, open it up. He's not rotting. He's not decaying. The cocoon can be opened. There isn't the corpse of a caterpillar inside there. There isn't the rotting remains of a caterpillar in there. There's something new. The time of rest is necessary for transformation. We must die. We must grieve loss. We must rest and allow change to happen and not rush on to the next step. And then fourth is that there is something new. New is not bad. Butterflies are far more glorious than caterpillars, far more beautiful than caterpillars. Lazarus, alive, is different from Lazarus before. Now it's interesting, the Gospels don't let us know what Lazarus was like. We see Lazarus standing alive, but still wrapped up. The story ends with Jesus saying, unwrap him. And many people believed. But we don't get to know what Lazarus was like after that. We're not told what he looked like underneath those wrappings. We're not told what he acted like. There is a French play called Lazarus Laughed, where the playwright has everyone talking to Lazarus after his resurrection and asking him, so what was death like? What is it like? And all Lazarus does is laugh. All he can do is laugh at their questions, but he never answers them. We don't know what human resurrection is like. We don't know what new life is going to look like. We have a glimpse with butterflies. Every year, butterflies go through that wonderful cycle. Every year we get to watch them emerge as beautiful, incredible creatures. But we don't ever know for us what it's going to be. But we know whatever it is better than what died. That's the promise we have. So our lesson today leaves us this Lent with 4 more things to practice. Because every week there is a practice. And practice means we work at it. Just like we practice the piano so we can learn how to play it. We practice baseball so we can play baseball. We practice things. That's how we learn to do them. Not by just hearing about them and knowing it. I know a lot about the piano. I don't practice, so I don't play very well. It takes practice in order to be able to do it. So the 4 practices from this lesson are, number 1, we have to practice dying. We have to practice accepting death. Think about your life. What kinds of things are dying, or what kinds of things have to die? The way things were when I was a child? Parts of the culture are dying. They're not the way they were when I was 5 years old. That didn't come to stay. It came to pass. It's not done that way anymore. Church is not what it used to be. Culture is not what it used to be. I am not what I used to be. I don't look like I used to look. I look in a mirror now and I go, who is that old lady? Because in my head I still look like I used to look. But that me has died. And that me has to die. And I need to practice dying to that image that I lived with for a very long time that has to die. What is it in our lives in the next 2 weeks that we have to once and for all let go of? The past has to die. We can't hold on to it. Secondly, we have to practice grieving, allowing ourselves to cry over the fact that it isn't the same anymore, and not just trying to keep a stiff upper lip, but to go ahead and grieve. Because if we don't grieve, just like in the real grief process when someone literally dies in our lives, if we do not grieve, it comes back to bite us later. We're only going to suffer mental illness if we don't grieve losses. So it is important to have a good cry over what isn't anymore, of what is passing away, of what is not going to be there for us tomorrow. And then thirdly, practice for the next 2 weeks is to physically rest. Allow ourselves the time, the space to really change, to not be the same. If we keep moving at the same pace, keep getting through every day, getting everything done, Lent is over, and my goodness, I'm no different than I was on Ash Wednesday. There needs to be a time of dormancy. There needs to be a time of physical rest to really let the spiritual take hold, to let the spiritual transformation take place. And then finally, we have to practice being ready for Easter. We have to practice looking for the new and seeing it as more beautiful. And not always looking at the past, oh, wasn't that a glorious caterpillar? Look at all the things that caterpillar ate, all the places that caterpillar went. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that caterpillar back again? No, look at the butterfly. Look how beautiful the butterfly is. You can remember the caterpillar. Don't dwell on the caterpillar. Dwell on the butterfly. Get ready to live in Easter, where you can say, oh my gosh, no, we don't have the organ like we used to. But what's coming that's going to be far better than an organ ever was? Because there was a time in the church when there were no organs. A very recent time, in fact. Organs are not that old. But we got used to it. But as time is dying, what's coming instead that's far more glorious? What in our lives is dying that, yes, we grieve and we miss, but what's coming that is far more glorious, that's far more beautiful? And can we train and practice our eyes, our ears, our whole selves to be open to the beauty that lies ahead? Or are our eyes closed because we're so busy focused on the caterpillar that we miss the butterfly? So in our remaining time between now and Easter, 4 practices. What has to die? Grieve that death. Take a rest for spiritual renewal, and then begin practicing, seeing the beauty that lies ahead instead of what is lost.